Hi, and welcome to Money and Culture with Shanna Fuld. I am Shanna Fuld. I'm your new host, and this is News from the Holy Land with Newsrael. I'm very excited to be with all of you tonight. This is my first time hosting the show, and I would love to start by giving you a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight. Let me tell it to you. What makes an Israeli high-tech company worth millions and millions of dollars? 450 million to be exact. How does the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem connect people of faith from all around the world and without getting sick? And what are the latest headlines coming out of Israel? All of that and much more. Today we are at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Newsrael Business and Culture Report with Shanna Fuld. It's 8:35 here in Israel. So thank you for being with us. Okay, so we are going to begin with our first guest of the night. His name is Amiram. Amiram is from Israel. He's currently living in the United States. I am so happy to welcome you. Amiram, thank you for joining us. He is from Spot, and I'm so happy for you to be here. I think a lot of people have questions about the tech world in Israel, and what I would love is if you could start off by just telling us a little bit about who you are and what your business does.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you for having me today, and congratulations for the show. So my name is Amiram. I'm originally from Jerusalem. I've lived there, born and raised there. My background is I've served in the Israeli military for about 7 years. I was an officer in the unit that's responsible for the infrastructure, or the cloud infrastructure of the military. And today I'm located in the West Coast in California. I started the company about 5 years ago, and which I'm happy to tell you more about it.
Great. So tell us, where exactly are you in LA? I mean, in California.
So based in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. This is where our offices are. I moved here about 4.5 years ago when we just started Spot. Spot has a really unique story of like how the company started. It was an academic research I was running as a student. Then we saw that there is a lot of customer demand for that in the cloud infrastructure ecosystem. So I actually decided to move to California and start the business here and raise money from investors here in the Silicon Valley.
That must have been a lot of work. I think raising money, you have to constantly be proving yourself and constantly telling your story and making people believe in you and why they should put money on your item. So I want to ask you about that. But before we get there, I want you to pretend like I'm a fifth grader and explain what your company does. Maybe if you could give us a couple of examples of what your software does, how it helps companies, and where somebody might use your software.
Absolutely. So you probably heard about the cloud computing space, right? This is where you buy servers, like a virtual servers from the giants companies in the world, from Amazon, from Google, from Microsoft, right? So what I can also tell you that like while it's really business critical to use the cloud and buy these virtual servers, it's extremely expensive. So it can get very expensive so that companies cannot pay that and just think about different alternatives. So what our software does.
How much money are we talking in that range?
So this is a market that is growing at a pace that no other industry have never grown. We're talking about just AWS within 10 years, Amazon within 10 years, right now generating over $40 billion of annual recurring revenue. This is Amazon only. And this is only the beginning. So the IT infrastructure world is like, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars per year. So it can get very expensive.
Wow. So like I asked, so companies are using this. Are they using this cloud computing software within their organization to work with organizations, maybe in a B2B type of a way? Can you sort of paints the picture there.
So think about every company that just needs to run applications for their customers. It could be B2B, it could be B2C. You can think about, for example, B2C like TikTok. All of their videos and all of their users are being stored in the cloud, obviously. So that's a huge customer of the cloud. But also think about a customer like AT&T, which is doing a lot of it's a telco with a lot of different systems, and also their platform is in the cloud. So from every segment, every customer type, every medium that you can think about it, there today, inevitably they have to use the cloud.
Wow, of course, 100%. So what can you give us the names of a couple of the top companies that you're working with as your client?
So some of our customers that probably our listeners will know about. So from a very famous US company called Ticketmaster. It sells all the ticketing for US shows in the US. So they're like a large customer of ours. Also Sony, Samsung. Also a big e-commerce retailer in Europe called Zalando. VMware, which is an infrastructure company. IBM is a customer of ours. So customer from a lot of different colors that are using our product can find everywhere.
That is so impressive. So my question is, a company like IBM, are you their only cloud computing software, or do they need or have space for multiple different cloud computing softwares that they might need for different types of work?
So no, we're not their only cloud computing software. Obviously, IBM is using the cloud for many things, and they're using probably multiple clouds spanning across Amazon and Google and Microsoft. And they're mostly using us for the most part to optimize their spend. So they run a large amount of infrastructure, so they want that some of their infrastructure will be optimized so they can deploy essentially more.
Okay, very cool. So I want to get back to a couple of the questions. I had so many for you right off at the top. And this is the Money and Culture Report. So excuse me, but I'm going to ask you a lot about money. So you say on your website that you are the most cost-efficient infrastructure. One, how do you know that that's true? And two, how have you been able to make that a reality for people?
So because cloud pricing is very transparent, so you can go to every cloud provider pricing page and see what's the price is. So it's really non-disputable if I'll tell you that I am the most efficient, because I look at the best discounts that they can get for you, and I can get you there. So that's why we can say that we're the most efficient, because we can get you to the highest level of discounts in the cloud providers. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. Well, I was wondering, in what ways have you been able to bring the cost down? Is there a trick that you found or a technology that you were able to create that was different than what the rest of this industry is using?
So yes, we found an interesting niche in the cloud provider and the way that you can get discounts from cloud provider, which is through something that called spot instances. What spot instances are, I'll pretend you're a fifth grader. So if you think about the cloud providers, at the end of the day, they have really big, large amount of data centers where they host their servers. And those servers are being sold to us as a virtual servers. Now, if you think about it, they have a lot of hardware, and not all of this hardware is utilized at any given moment. So what they do, also think about just like Hotel Tonight. So a lot of hotels have rooms that they're not utilized. So does the cloud providers have a lot of capacity that are not utilized. And what they did, they offered a model that calls Spot, and they basically say, we can get you this unused capacity for a much lower rate. However, if we need that capacity back, we'll just kick you out. So you as a customer, you'll say oh, that sounds great, but I can't really use it for everything that I want because I might be kicked out. You don't want to go to a hotel that they'll tell you in the middle of the night, oh, you need to go out because it was a cheap rate. So what we did, is we built a software that actually helps to utilize these like unused capacity in a way that also if the cloud provider needs that back, we're able to seamlessly migrate their applications from like one server to another, so they don't experience any downtime or any
Wow.
interruption.
It's magic. That's magic. That sounds really efficient and magic. Wow. So I want to move. First of all, thank you for making it clear. I'm a journalist, and my one of the things that I really focus on is trying to understand big concepts and make them easy for people, and write them for people, and express them for people in a way that if they're not familiar, they'll get familiar within just a few minutes. So thank you for working with me on that. Now, I wanted to talk to you a bit more about Israel. You were born and raised here, and now your business is in the United States. Can you tell me culturally what has been different for you? What have you taken? What have you given? And I also noticed that your company operates in London and Tel Aviv as well as in the United States. So tell me a little bit about the culture that you've experienced.
So I think that something that Israel gave me, which is something I will cherish for the end of my life, is like serving the country in the military. So a lot of like the values and a lot of like the techniques and even the knowledge that we have, like me and my management team, of like running the company, is coming from us like being in the military. um, and this is like we have like this sentence in Hebrew that says like, the people builds the military and the military builds the people, which is so true about like the tech ecosystem. So as a young individuals, we go to the military and we have like the biggest playground in the world, that like we can get exposed to amazing technologies. And then when we go out from the military, we get like the experience on the professional side and also on the technical side. And I can tell you, this is something that Israel can give to people that like probably no other country can.
Wow. I'm so happy to hear that. That's so much pride. And a lot of people have different experiences coming out of the military. And so it's really great for me to hear that you've taken that and let it lift you up, and lifted you so high that you sold your company for $450 million, which is very exciting. And I have to ask, what does this acquisition mean for your staff, mean for your organization? I've been through mergers and acquisitions, and they are not always pretty. So can you tell me a little bit about what you're expecting, and when is this going to start?
So I think that the most beautiful thing about this acquisition is the synergy and the better together approach between NetApp and Spot. When we approached this acquisition, so we said like, NetApp does all these great things in the cloud, and Spot does all these great things in the cloud. And if we combine them together, and not like change our product or change their product, but like if we combine it together, we have like a force multiplier. So that's why when we're approaching this acquisition, you've been through mergers and acquisitions, and like sometimes the product can disappear, the team can disappear. But like here is a unique situation where NetApp actually wants to embrace our team and embrace our product, and that has already begun. And we're just going to work and continue to build our products with inside NetApp. So that's a real interesting thing about this acquisition.
That sounds like a really great partnership.
It is.
Congratulations on that. What have you taken from your time in the United States? Have you gained anything of value?
I've been living in California. You see the mentality. You also see the diversity of like in California, because like you can find here people from like all over the world coming here to like build companies and work for companies. So I've taken a lot of like knowing the other side, be way more diverse, open to different cultures, and I took that a lot, which is something that like in small Israel, it's really hard to see because everyone knows everyone. And here in the US, it's a little bit different. But obviously, Israel is amazing, US is amazing, and just has different taste, I would say.
Okay. Well, last question of the night. Are you happy?
I am very happy.
Great. Thank you so much, Amiram. It's been a pleasure. Was there anything that I missed from this talk that you wanted to say?
No, I think great questions. Very happy to be here. Gonna be a big fan of this show. It's always great to be ambassador of Israel, and thank you for doing this amazing work. This is not only like being a journalist; this is also being an ambassador. So thank you, Shanna.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Thank you.
And now we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this message.
When you want to know what's happening in the Holy Land, Newsrael gives you the latest news feed from Israel. Follow our live coverage of the topics that interest you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Because it's there. It's the room. The room is too big, and the mic is echoing. Hi. Okay, so we are back now. I'm going to bring on a friend, a guest. I am so excited to bring her to the show. She works at the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, and first of all, her name is Tiffany. I'm so excited for her to be here, mostly because she is doing such important work, and she's bringing so much value to the Holy Land, and she's also working on an enormous project. So I am going to introduce you to her. Tiffany, why don't you tell us what you do?
Hey! Shalom, everyone! Shanna, it's so good to be here. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. So my name is Tiffany. I am with the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem here in Israel, and I take on the events registration department for the ministry.
Amazing. So your event has taken a completely different shape this year due to COVID-19. Why don't you tell us what happened there?
Okay, so interestingly, we do a lot of events, right, at the embassy. And more than events, we also do a lot of aid work. And that's how really Christians from all over the world get to partner with us, because we, in essence, act as the hands and the feet of believers all around the world who wants to bless Israel, right? But one of the biggest feasts, if not the biggest feast that we hold, is the Feast of Tabernacles, or as we call Sukkot in Ivrit or Hebrew. And as you have mentioned, because of the pandemic that the world is experiencing, we will take on a different route this year. And interestingly, the embassy celebrates our 40th year as well, this 2020. And it just has to, it had to happen that it coincides with the global situation of the pandemic. And so we're turning the usual Feast of Tabernacles here in Jerusalem into a virtual conference, which is a first for the embassy and for our delegates for the past 40 years.
Wow. So that's, first of all, there are so many people that are coming for this feast. So
Correct.
many important, so many people who believe, so many people who are excited. Do you ever have people who come and it's their first time in the land?
Oh, for sure. So since, it's been going on for 40 years, and I've taken on this role since last year. But we have catered to almost 7,000 people from all over the world, right? And most often than not, obviously, we would have at least more than half of that community come back, right? They're all returning delegates, and the rest would be new blood to the feast. So it's always so interesting to see like a new nation show up or a new nation bring their flags, to parade during the Parade of Nations as part of the feast. So it's always so exciting every year. There's like a new nation that's introduced, new person having a new like testimony about what the feast is like.
So, what are some of the countries that are represented?
Oh my goodness, we've got over 150 countries or nations represented every year. Like last year, some of the new ones would be okay. I'll run you down with the usual ones, right? So obviously we've got USA, one of our biggest communities who come year after year. We've got the Philippines, where I come from. We've got Germany. We've got the islands like Fiji and Cook Islands and Samoa, right? We've got the Asian region, Singapore, Japan, Taiwan. We had a really big delegation from Taiwan last year, and amazing because they were able to bring a set of worship leaders as well, who gave like a few, like worship performances during the week. We also had delegations from Norway, from where else? France, right? From Denmark, all the Finland, right? How can I forget Finland? So it's really like a roster of the nations, and it's why it's so. And I would transition it real quick to why we celebrate it, is because as Christians, right, and as believers, it's like an appointed time, as what it's how it's stated in Zechariah 14, right, in the Bible, how it's one of the moed or moedim. I don't know if I'm saying that right in Ivrit or Hebrew, but it's one of the three appointed times where the Lord shows up. And the first two would be Passover, second would be Shavuot, Pentecost, and the third is Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles. So for us, Gentile believers, the Lord has instructed us to come up to Jerusalem. So all the nations, as written in Zechariah 14, will come up to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, to observe this feast of the Lord, and to really essentially kind of like prophesy over the second coming of Jesus Christ. So
It's very exciting.
yeah.
So let me hear. Can you give me a little bit color on who is going to show up for your virtual event this year? Maybe give us a couple of names, where they're from, what they do, why they're special, why they were chosen.
Right, of course. Oh my goodness, when you mention like virtual event, I'm like, oh my goodness, it is virtual. It's just so new.
The first virtual Feast of the Tabernacles ever.
Ever. Can you imagine? Ever. And it had to happen on the 40th birthday of the embassy, right?
You want to know what I think that this is actually a very special opportunity to have people who would not have otherwise been able to participate.
I'm so happy you mentioned that, just because I would say that a consumer insight, right, from a marketing perspective, there would be nations who would not be able to afford to fly to Jerusalem, and I would bring up an example, one of our prime examples, or I would say a testimony, a miracle testimony really, would be the nation of Bolivia. Just a few years ago, well, since they began to come to the feast and to celebrate the feast from Bolivia, Latin America, right? We have a branch there, ICJ Bolivia, and when we had an interview with the national director, Apostle Alberto Magno, he was saying how his congregation initially they would save up for 5 years just to be able to go to Israel and to celebrate the feast.
5 years of saving
Yes.
for this.
5 years to save up for the flight, right? To save up for the conference fee, etc. And most especially to save up for their first fruit offering to the Lord, and that's blessing Israel with the nations. And as Christians, again, that's such a crucial sort of like instruction. If you're gonna attend the Feast of Tabernacles and if you're gonna observe it, the Lord has instructed you to bring your first fruit offerings from your nation, right? So why I call it a miracle testimony, Bolivia, because the first time they attended, right? And the testimony of this apostle, the head of this branch in Latin America, he brought in, I think, 10,000 USD, if I'm not mistaken. And, obviously that was like invested on and really prepared for years before they came to Israel. And after that first time of going to Israel, their church grew. And now, when I talk to him and when I look at their church growth, it has grown to over 20,000 members, Shanna. Are you kidding
Wow.
me?
Because people,
20,000 members in Bolivia, and all of them have grown a heart for Israel, and not for anything else, but because this is just to exemplify that the word of the Lord is real. Like what he says in the Bible is true. When he says, you go to Israel, you bless Israel, you will be blessed. You curse Israel, you will be cursed. And as a Gentile believer, if I've instructed you to attend the feast, to bring the first fruit for Israel, and to observe the feast, you and your nation that you represent will be blessed. And that's such a great testimony. Like, can you imagine from a church? I don't know, maybe I think they were like 100-member church, and after observing the feast and bringing everything that they can as a first fruit offering to the feast for the Lord, now to date they're more than 20,000 church strong, and year after year they have not failed to attend the Feast of Tabernacles and to bring an offering from their nation.
so their community grew bigger and their community financially supported them to be able to return.
Correct.
Very,
And,
very
and yeah.
inspiring.
And I attribute that to, the goodness of the Lord and the faithfulness of the word of God. So and I just want to ring in, like, I may have veered away from the question that you were saying, but you're asking rather, but you're mentioning how it's such an opportunity for people who are not able to come to attend, and that's essentially like one of the biggest like selling points of this year's feast. It's going to be the biggest feast just because it doesn't have any limit. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you this, and you heard it straight from me. First time online live stream, the conference fee early bird rate is 50 USD for the whole 7 day.
$50.
50. And for the past years, again, past 40 years, the normal rate is ranging from 450 to 470 USD per head. And
Wow.
celebrate 5-6 days of the feast. Now it's just 50 USD for a whole 7 day with overflowing content, because we're giving our delegates more than 50 seminar tracks that they can choose from, and it's gonna give them access, to the tracks till the end of the year, even up until 1 year starting from the feast date. So it's just an exciting venture, really, and I don't think people who have attended the feast would experience it the same way before. It's going to be on another level this year.
Well, I think that the most exciting thing I saw on the website is that you're doing some very special virtual tours, which I think is going to be worth every penny of the $50. So tell us some of the locations around Israel that you're going to take people on virtual tours. Which, by the way, whether you're a Jew or a Christian or an Arab or you're anyone in the world and you're interested in going on a virtual tour while you are quarantining at home or trying to be safe, wow, what a great thing to be able to participate in.
Correct, for sure. If I was like stuck at home, I would, and I have a heart for Israel, or I would literally just want to be outside my, limitations. This would be the perfect opportunity for that. A couple of location tours that we will be going to would be, well, we're starting the feast over at the traditional site on the Jordan River where Jesus was baptized, to prepare the way, as John the Baptist would say. And that's over at, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but Qasr Al Yahud.
Okay, yes, yep.
And then we take our delegates to the Garden Tomb for a beautiful grand communion, right? Taking the communion of God. So we're gonna have a communion service at the Garden Tomb, and then the Hulda Steps, or the Halda Steps. How do you pronounce that? But it's really the main entryway into the Second Temple in Jerusalem. And then we're gonna travel over to the Tower of David as well, overlooking the entrance to Jerusalem through the Jaffa Gate in the Old City. Plus exciting tours to the Knesset, to the Yad Vashem, City of David, and many other important locations around Jerusalem. So again, just because it's virtual, we do not have limitations at all. And I can tell you now, that's why I'm so excited. Our media production team has already been out and about while restrictions are not so fully, in place.
Your videos are amazing.
Wow. Thank you. I will pass that encouraging message to our team. But
Absolutely. Team of videographers. I checked out all of the beautiful footage of Israel and the sites and the stories. Really great.
that's good to know. And more exciting content to come. So yeah, our media production teams, like, they're since Monday, actually since weeks ago, they've been scouting different locations all around Israel to shoot. And yeah, that's an added element really for the people tuning in and for the people joining the feast this year, because for the past 40 years it's always been just within Israel, I mean within Jerusalem, and for the
Okay.
extended version of it in Galilee, but now it's all around. So
Everywhere. Okay, great. This is my last question for you for the night. How do you want people to feel in these months coming up to the Feast of the Tabernacle or Sukkot, in Hebrew it's Sukkot, and what do you think people are going to take away? Like, what's the emotion? What's the message? What's the message there?
to me personally, I think this is gonna be their personal feast, and I say that because we are bringing Jerusalem to their living rooms. You know what I mean? Like, and it's such a beautiful and exciting season, really, we're living in. More than the pandemic that we're experiencing, more than the challenges that come here and there, every nation experiencing the same thing. And we're all like sort of in a bubble, and this is the new reality. And in my opinion, as a Christian, I believe that in every season there's a purpose. And regarding the Feast of Tabernacles, the Lord wants, whether Jew or Gentile, right? There's always a significance to why the Feast of Tabernacles is meant to be celebrated. And this year will be their year to meet with the Lord, because it's an appointed time by God. So I'm excited.
You're excited. You're always excited. You bring the energy. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you for joining us. Good luck in working on this virtual tour and this virtual feast. I think that it's going to be absolutely beautiful. So thank you for joining us and telling us all about it.
I'm so happy that you had me here. Can I just invite people to a webinar tomorrow real quick? If you have
Oh,
like
sure.
1 minute. Yeah. So for everyone tuning in, if you guys are wanting to know more about the feast, we're launching like a 10-week webinar series on the ICEJ Facebook page. That's International Christian Embassy Jerusalem. Just type that out real quick on Facebook or YouTube, and you'll find our official pages. And tomorrow, 3 p.m., every Friday, starting tomorrow, Israeli time, 3 p.m., we're going to be featuring different guests, and prominent thought leaders in the ministry from the land and around the world, to talk about the Feast of Tabernacles. So if you guys are free, we'd love for you to join us. We're going to have a couple of question and answer portions in the end as well. So thank you for having me, Shanna. And I'm so proud of you and Newsrael. And congratulations. Mazel tov to the team. You guys are doing great work for everybody.
Thank you so much.
Blessings.
Okay, thank you for staying with me. That was Tiffany. She just brings the energy. She always does, and she's a delight. Now I'm going to just bring a couple of headlines to you. Okay, so I just want to let you know about a couple of stories that are happening here in the Holy Land. This one is a bit fun. So restaurateurs are praising a Likud member of Knesset who has not much been in the headlines before. So yes, we can see her here. I see her pop up over here. Her name is Ifat Shasha Biton, and she has been celebrated for doing something that I say is very important, and that is sticking to your guns. So she insisted on reversing an order to reduce restaurants in Israel to takeout only. So previously, restaurants here, Israel has gone into a second wave of coronavirus, and in order to try to combat the coronavirus, government regulations thought it best to stop restaurants from hosting people in a regular way, having customers come in, sit down, feeding them, and they were trying to move to a takeout only. Now, Biton said there's no data here showing us that restaurants are a source of coronavirus and a place where people get infected. So she said, how about this? You show me the numbers and I'll support you. But until you have the numbers, not so much. So listen to what a chef in Hulon did. Okay, this chef, his name here. Hold on, let me find his name. His last name is Cohen. He's Chef Cohen, Tal Cohen, actually, and he on Channel 12 gave a little bite. I don't want to be too cheeky, but he gave a little bite and he showed a picture of a fish that he has that he named after Biton. So he said that the fish, the sea bass, goes against the water, and so does Biton. So he named this fish plate after her, and I thought that was pretty funny. And some other regulations that Biton also insisted was keeping pools and gyms and beaches open, whereas previously regulators wanted to close them. So that's that story. I thought it was very cute. You can see pictures of the fish online. A soldier in the IDF, unfortunately, we have to pray for him, was injured on Wednesday. One was injured and one actually died in the Golan Heights. 20-year-old Corporal Shachar Algazar was from Moshav Ranin. It's a town in the southern Israel outside of Beersheba. This accident happened while Algazar was operating a vehicle. He was coming down a narrow and curvy road when the vehicle toppled over on him and crushed him. His partner was injured in the head but remains alive. Algazar was laid to rest today. Unfortunately, he was posthumously promoted to the rank of sergeant, and an investigation has been opened to see what went wrong here. In 2019, so last year, 5 military officers were killed in motor accidents and 13 were injured in automobile accidents. So let's hope that this investigation brings some light here, and let's pray that their families are able to find rest and peace. Now, this morning, on a little bit of a brighter note, 34 Ethiopian immigrants landed in Israel, and they are scheduled to be here right now. Now, if you don't know about this community, they are called the Falash Mura community. They live in Ethiopia. And in the late 19th century and early 20th century, about 8,000 of these community members had to convert to Christianity forcefully. So what Israel did was we went in and rescued these people, and upwards of 7,000 Ethiopian Jews were rescued during a time of civil unrest in Ethiopia. There was a very strong revolution there, and it became very violent. And so Israeli officials devised this unbelievable plan, which was that they were going to set up a hotel in Sudan, which was on the path to Israel, and they were going to smuggle our community, the Jewish community, back into Israel, some by land, some by sea, and some by air. So they came in with airplanes and rescued these people from what could have been a very bloody finish, as many of their communities were ransacked and murdered. Now, these immigrants are going to have to go through a 14-day quarantine as they arrive here in Israel. Any immigrant who comes to Israel, who's visiting or who is going to stay, must do a 14-day quarantine. This is what is required, and a really great movie selection for you. If you're interested, Red Sea Diving Resort. I just watched this film, and it gave a lot of realistic insights into how the Falash Mura community was brought back home to Israel. That's it for today's headlines. I hope that you enjoyed our interviews and come back again. I just actually want to let you know that Monday through Thursday, I'm running a podcast in the morning where I give the top headlines. Some of them I went through this morning, and these headlines are the most important news of the day. I deliver it in about 10 minutes, and I hope that it'll be of value to you. It's called the Israel Daily News Podcast. Thank you for being with us, and if you are headed into your weekend, have a restful, great Shabbat.
When you want to know what's happening in the Holy Land, Newsrael gives you the latest news feed from Israel. Follow our live coverage of the topics that interest you.